So, guys, it's that time of the week again. Another episode of the Fantasy Kickabout. So, welcome back, Donnacha, to the podcast, and welcome Steve to the podcast as well, who's making his debut. How are we keeping, lads?
I'm brilliant. Hanging in there, watching a bit of football before we start tonight, and I'll have my eye on that. Hopefully not too much, won't get too distracted, but yeah, keeping well.
And Donnacha?
Nice one. Yeah, doing all right. Like, definitely helped by a great result for Liverpool on Tuesday night, which is just so badly needed. Same as everyone, just keeping away from everyone. Unfortunately, I had an exercise bike that arrived today, so that's going to keep me entertained for at least maybe 3 days until the motivation falls. But until such time, that's my new favorite thing.
Excellent. Hopefully, we might see the bike on a podcast that Donnacha doing, I don't know, a marathon or something like that, or cycling for 24 hours. So
we want to get some sound engineers in to sort out the heavy breathing. If I'm blowing out my arse, I don't think that would be a great experience for the listeners. Let's just say.
Obviously, Donnacha, you mentioned obviously Liverpool. We will touch on Champions League and the games during the week, but we will start with the controversy around obviously the online abuse this week that's been directed at James McClean, his family, his brother, his wife. It's just a mad time at the moment. I'm finding it really, really difficult to kind of get my head around it, that why it's happening, but also in my head I'm kind of thinking these are the reasons it's happening. I don't know. It might come to you first, Steve. What's your kind of thoughts on it? What do you think needs to be done to stop this online abuse?
It's a real head scratcher in terms of who takes the reins to stop the abuse. Is it going to be the Premier League, like the English FA, taking the reins in terms of dealing with themselves and trying to come down on top of fans with bans from when they can return to games? Or are you going to target like the likes of Facebook or Instagram, Twitter themselves to take extra measures to protect people from online abuse in general? Because I can go online now, and the way I see it, I could give any one of the Premier League players abuse, and horrible abuse at that, directed towards their family, and there's no repercussions. So when you look at it like that, it's tough. Like, with no repercussions, you're just going to get it more and more, and I think we have started to see it more and more, and it kind of spread out to, okay, that's your family members dragging other people into it. In this case with James McClean, like it should become a police matter, or if not, the FA and Facebook and Twitter have to take some kind of measurements to stop it.
Yeah, and I suppose this week, which was I don't want to say it's nice to see, but there was a good bit of support in terms of bringing the issue to the public eye in terms of James McClean's abuse by Sky Sports, which they hadn't really done in previous times. Do you think obviously that is a positive step in that direction? What else do you think could be done, Donnacha, in terms of tackling this?
Yeah, like, I mean, first of all, it's just abhorrent, and it really does. It's you really feel like, you know, there's so many like gutter people out there, and just you feel humanity's in a bad spot when you see some of the vile things. And I don't understand the psychology of why a human being would consider it, one, to be a legitimate action to take to send something vile and horrific and purposely harmful to anyone. I just don't understand it. Like, it's a complex issue, first and foremost, it's a very complicated thing, and because you have different stakeholders who are heavily involved in it, but they're not yet been accountable to it, it just makes it all the more difficult. Like, I think in terms of like the FA or UEFA or FIFA tackling it, like they've been, that Kick It Out campaign has existed for as long as I can remember. I remember being in primary school with the black and white wristbands with all the Livestrong, and it's very clear that they don't work, that nobody listens to those corporations or those organizations. So I think it has to be a twofold cooperation between state and between these digital platforms. I mean, it's in the have essentially shut off their publishing in Australia due to like a scrap between them and their government. But I think fundamentally, I think having an online presence and being able to voice your opinion online, I totally understand freedom of speech, but I think it's a right that needs to be somewhat earned. So I feel that platforms should, if when you sign up to a platform, you should have to submit your ID and your details and verify it's you. This ability to be anonymous on Twitter is the source of it. Guys think that they can get away with this and sound off, create an account, send some abuse, and then leave. And then secondary to that, when guys when guys, girls, whoever it is, when somebody is engaging in this sort of hate speech online and targeted harassment, now it becomes a legal matter, and it becomes a criminal activity. You know, I think long term it's the only way to stamp it out. I think there are going to be individuals that are going to should suffer really grave consequences for their actions. I was astonished that that young lad down in Kerry got away with abusing Ian Wright, and then Ian Wright accepted his apology online. But that doesn't mean, oh, you can do whatever you want and then apologize after the fact. That's not how this works. I was really disappointed that the judge ruled that it was, a naive, immature. It was naive, it was immature, but like, you cannot undertake those actions. You cannot say things. He would never say that to Ian Wright within shouting distance of him, So it is a complex issue. It's going to have to be cooperation between the online platforms, whether it's requiring ID or not, I don't know. And then wherever this abuse takes place, the state needs to get involved.
Yeah, like I remember hearing as well about that the judge, one of his reasons for pretty much giving the kid a slap on the wrist was he didn't want the kid to have a criminal record, which again kind of goes back to Steve's point where there's no repercussions to these actions. But you bring up a really, really good point, Donnacha, about the verification of accounts. And for example, we probably all follow a Messi or a Ronaldo or Liverpool or United players online, and they have that little blue tick beside their account. So obviously those sort of we'll say famous people have to verify their account and to confirm that it is them. So surely that can be done with social media platforms for the average user of either of us three.
There's one quite big problem in the eyes of the platforms. So obviously these platforms, Facebook, Instagram, like these platforms are still growing, and especially in more developing countries where there's proliferation now of smartphones and internet access. But in certain countries, the ability to have these verification documents are not always as straightforward as it is here in Ireland. So that's one problem. And then another reason why they don't want people to the ID verification isn't currently on the table is that it will stunt the growth of these platforms. And that's a purely like business-centric reason why, and born totally out of their own self-interest, why it's probably not feasible when take a country like Uganda, which is now developing a middle class, its economy is going a lot better. People in Uganda in their droves are now signing up to all these platforms, and there's future monetization and ad revenue for Facebook with those users growing. And if Facebook isn't showing their shareholders, we're continuing to add users, its share price falls. So that's why, well, one of the big reasons I think why it's not on the table, that cash is king as always, and data is the new economy. So
yeah,
they're happy to just let people willy-nilly sign up, no barriers to entry, hop aboard, you know.
Very kind of interesting kind of look at it from, like you said, the social media perspectives. Just going back, Steve, to James McClean's, I don't know if you heard his interview on a couple of the channels over the last couple of days, but in the past he's obviously, I don't want to say had a go, but he mentioned that there was very little support from within the dressing room. But it's really good to see now, again, over the last couple of days, that a lot of his ex-teammates, people that are obviously involved in football, whether it's ex-players, current players, showing their support for James McClean and all the abuse he's had to go through, because this has been going on for 10 years. And I do think a significant part of this was his wife coming out and posting online, because I don't think we've really heard from her before. And I think that really hit home with a lot of people. But like I just said, it's been going on 10 years. Every November, it's pretty much the same argument. You know what's going to happen. But Steve, when you look at it and you look at James McClean against Nemanja Matic, who doesn't wear the poppy, what, like, I know James McClean can be a feisty character on and off the pitch, but no one deserves that level of abuse, no matter your race, no matter your nationality, no matter your religion. Like why are these things happening?
Like, you make a good point when you said Matic, and yeah, it's the issue of, it always is an issue with the poppy, and there is certain players in the league who just don't wear it, and it's never an issue with them. It's an issue with James McClean. I think it's the lack of education around the whole Irish and British conflict over the years. Like it's the lack of education on what went wrong and who did what. From maybe the British side of, maybe they don't realize how much damage they might have done up north and to the entire country as a whole. And especially younger people coming through, they're probably not seeing that they're probably being taught of the good things that they brought to the north in terms of economy and infrastructure and everything. They don't probably learn of what we might have come across as the bad guys in history in this one. And for many conflicts around the world where they've been involved over the years, that they do come across as the bad guys, which, yeah, I don't think they accept in terms of their teaching of history. And it has been an issue in the past week or so. I don't know if you guys have heard the story around the government talking with like college institutions around the teaching and spreading of information of their past history and kind of wrongdoing, that they're kind of trying to push that down. I don't know if any of you have heard of that, but people are fighting back over that, being like, we have to learn from our mistakes and we have to talk about these issues in general. He's received a lot of abuse that other players haven't, and I don't understand. I'd question it as well. I don't understand why, when people be like, oh, it's the issue is the poppy, that these people giving him abuses, that they'll just like, oh, he's not wearing it. And you bring up the fact that, well, X, Y, and Z player aren't wearing it. Why aren't they getting the same abuse? And there's kind of silence on that side of being like, oh, I don't know. But you do know why. It's because of the history there. And it's kind of the negative feelings, and yeah, you might get it more from kind of a unionist perspective of, yeah, the abuse might be coming from that side of things. So they're seen as that one conflict where they don't know anything about Matic and his reasons behind it. So they just leave him out of it because there's no history there in their mind of why he wouldn't wear it or his reasonings behind ever not wearing it in the first place.
And yeah, I think it's like it's a combination of like James McClean has become this lightning rod for an issue that has permeated these islands for 100 years, well, far more than 100 years. And I think it's the combination of maybe, and this isn't this like in certain instances, he's probably said things. I hope he doesn't regret them, because he has strong views, and I think everybody is entitled to voice their opinion, especially if they feel passionately about something or about a particular issue. But you know, that joke with the balaclavas a couple of years ago, he admitted himself probably not the best move. So it's a combination of certain actions have been perceived like on the extreme as being provocative, and then James, like a guy in a place like Derry, who is very clearly on one side of the fence in that conflict. You marry those two together, and most people are just going to form their opinion of one tweet and one line of history that they know, and both of them happen to be negative. And then apparently it's just this free-for-all that you can threaten James McClean's family and say you're going to bring a gun to a game or burn down his house. Like, what is wrong with these people? Like, it's so vile. It really is. Like, it's...
Yeah. And you obviously mentioned the balaclava image that he posted. I think it was this time last year on his social media accounts. He obviously held his hand up and said he was wrong to do so, but he also said that was a buildup of 10 years of hate towards him, of abuse towards him. And he does one thing that's, let's say, stepping out of line, and he's receiving even more abuse for it. I was going to ask you, Donnacha, about in terms of we said some of the other players in the league, some of the other Irish players that probably have come out in the last couple of weeks or so, and have said that they didn't really want to wear the poppy, but they wore it just to avoid all the abuse. So I think we do have to look at James McClean and, of course, respect him for his beliefs, respect him for his decisions, but nearly almost respect him for standing by his decision, because it could have easily been something that 2-3 years into the abuse, he could have turned around and said, do you know what, I'll just wear the poppy because it'll make everyone's life easier. But he's standing his ground to what he believes in, and I just think someone like that deserves a lot of credit, and obviously doesn't deserve all the abuse. They have their reasons. It's like, for example, on this podcast, if I decided I didn't want to show my face on the camera, you guys would just respect that, if you know what I mean. I know it's nowhere near the level of that, but you just respect my decision. You mightn't agree with it, but you'd respect it.
Yeah, like, I mean, the guy's integrity and his his conviction in being vocal about something that we have to remember as well. Like, if you've got like, speaking about other Irish players, it was put to David Moyler during the week, and there was David Moyler, why weren't you a vocal supporter of James McClean? And he said, when he was a player, I didn't want to put myself in the crosshairs, and I could understand that as well. I don't think David Moyler has anything to really answer for in terms of doing that at that point in his career, because whoever sticks their head above the parapet is going to get taken off by all these trolls. But like, the thing with James McClean that makes him quite a unique case is this isn't a guy who grew up as a kid reading about the Troubles or watching it happen on TV, like, the Alma bombing or something. But like in Derry, that was on his doorstep. He lived those Troubles. This was his first-hand experience, and it's probably a huge part of who he is as a person. It's not a value system that he's just licked off the ground or from media. He lived these experiences. And, the fact that I think in the main, people are totally disregarding the fact that, he grew up in Derry in the 90s. That's, like Liam Neeson, another man from Derry, would tell you, even when he was growing up, how difficult a place that is. It's just, he was right in being in that poppy action. It all sort of stemmed from that. He was right in what he did, and the fact that it has cost him so much in terms of his day-to-day life and getting abuse and extend to his family, it's a real tragedy, and it's a real failure of the society that we live in now, where it's like, I can type in some awful shit into a laptop and go, ha 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 ha, close the lid and go about my day, and there's no accountability. Whereas if they said that, like, James McClean would run through them. We know that man can tackle. He would tackle a guy around the neck and be justified to do so, in my opinion.
Yeah. Again, like it's obviously it's great to see the support for him for this week. And again, I hope it's not a case of that just kind of dies out and the abuse gets more and more. And again, we could probably spend a whole podcast talking about the abuse that Martial's receiving. I know Nketiah from Arsenal received some online abuse today as well. There's players left, right, and centre, and I'm sure in other sports as well, it's something along those lines. Like we obviously discussed what like some of the reasons or some of the ideas that could potentially identify people online or hold them accountable for it or get the certain different authorities involved. But where do you think it goes, or how long do you think it'll take for this or something to be put in place where people are actually being held accountable? Do you think it'll happen in the next couple of weeks, couple of months? Will it be in the next year or two before, or will this just constantly continue where someone sets up account Maradona 564 with a picture of a car and he's just continuing to abuse someone online?
I think I know that guy.
Yeah, I think it's a tough question because it's going to come from a country, and most likely it's going to come from a European country, because we've seen them kind of tackle Facebook and Instagram in ways, and maybe the United States as well. But they're questioning around their policies of, well, who's responsible for this? And governments are learning more about what social media can kind of do to people in terms of bullying and harassment. We've seen cases over the years. So I don't think it's going to be in the next few weeks, because it's going to be a big move no matter who makes it in terms of a kind of a governing body. We might see moves in terms of maybe the FA try to push in some actions, but it's a very tough one, because where do you start? And like Donnacha said already, you have all these other countries joining these social media platforms. Like, their views of the world are completely different to ours. You can go to a country who is just developing and you talk about something like gay rights, and like that's going to be an issue again when we talk about the World Cup in Qatar, and kind of their treatment towards women as well. Like but that's their culture at the moment. They're still developing. So some of those things did used to happen here a long time ago. Like, gay rights have come on a long way in the Republic of Ireland over the last few years. So some other countries are behind us in that development. Like, where do you cut people off? You have a player like maybe Martial reacting to people in the far ends of nowhere who have just got the internet. Like, they don't see this as an issue that we see it. That, like, they probably know they're being racist and the abuse is wrong, but they don't ever see any consequence. They don't see an impact on people's lives and how they interact with them. They haven't developed that kind of. They've got the technology, but they haven't got the awareness of how to impact other people around the world.
Yeah, it's like from a psychological perspective, over many hundreds of years we've developed these like social norms. Like, if you scream and shout vile abuse to someone in the street and you get a box, that's kind of expected. It comes with the territory. So the deterrent to scream vile abuse at anyone should be just don't be an awful human being. It's pretty straightforward. But the deterrent is people don't do it, or on public transport, even if they have these insidious kind of belief systems, because there's a direct cause and effect relationship there. And those social norms haven't yet been built out online, because there's none. Because, I mean, for every young lad down in, was it Dingle or Tralee, who was going to be convicted of that like hate crime, essentially, at Ian Wright, for every one of them, there's 10,000 that get away with it and are emboldened by it. Like, to go back to your question, Gaz, I can't see this being a non-issue. And like, if we fast forward 5 years down the line, I think this is still a really, really serious issue. And I think until legislation sits down with platforms and map out a plan, and this plan involves, both parties need to have full-time people, employees, public servants thinking about this stuff. And like, we can talk about it here on the podcast, but then like, I'll go back to my job, you'll go back to your job, and nothing really happens. Like, people need to be employed in their droves to people smarter than I anyway, to fix it. And I think it's we're going to be stuck with this horrible, insidious part of society online for a while, and until there's causality, until there's some, whether it's financial causality, someone sends a tweet, slapped with a 20 grand fine, can't afford to pay the fine, and now they've all sorts of, they've a whole avalanche of bad consequences. And until that starts happening, this is going to continue, in my opinion. And I don't want to have that opinion. I want to be more optimistic about it, but
yeah, I was literally going to say that the same thing. I'd like to be more optimistic, but the next 5-10 years, I can still see this being an issue. But I suppose we'll just kind of finish up on. There's been positive steps in this week in terms of the support for James McClean and his family, and the fact that the likes of Sky Sports interviewed him and brought it to the viewers' attention. So I suppose we take that as a positive, but like we all said just there needs to be so much more to be done. We might, guys, just move on to a bit of Champions League talk. Obviously, Champions League was back this week. So what we decided to do was, obviously, Donnacha watched obviously the Liverpool game for obvious reasons. If you're not watching this on YouTube, he's wearing his Liverpool jersey. And myself and Steve, we said we would keep an eye on Barcelona and PSG. Donnacha, were you surprised by the result?
Do you know what? In hindsight, I've been thinking about it. I was at the time. I was delighted. I'm just going to say we, because I followed this club my whole life, and that's just how it goes. And if some smart ass wants to be like, "Oh, how many minutes did you play?" Whatever. But we were at it from minute one. And I was thinking today about like the reasons why Liverpool played so well. Like, that's one of the best performances we've had this season, certainly in a really difficult season with a lot of injuries. I think it's because Leipzig tried to play against us with a similar style of football. Like, we've struggled this season against Burnleys and Brightons and these 2 banks of 4, sometimes two banks of 5, where outworking the opposition is redundant because there's nowhere to run, because everybody's squeezed into this little tiny space. And unless you have Iniesta-like qualities of thread in the pass, or, you're not going to score, and then you're done on the counter and ball over the top. The game on Tuesday, like the front three, was the most cohesive they've been in a long, long time. Mo Salah is just world class. I love him. Like, I want more people to start the conversation of where he sits in terms of all-time Premier League greats. And obviously that extends into Europe, because he's just sensational. Just a menace the whole time. And the fact that we now go to the Merseyside derby on Saturday evening with some confidence, much needed, and a bit of momentum. And I think Jurgen has had a really difficult couple of weeks, which we know about. Losing his mother and not being able to grieve properly, 1, because of his job, and 2, because of travel restrictions. That's so tough. And all these stupid rumors whizzed around the internet about him leaving. And he just had the most perfect press conference. Like, I've been in football for 30 years. I can turn off. I deal with things outside of football. We're fine. And that pre-match press conference kind of set the tone for the performance. So it's not done, because Liverpool proved more than anyone that no first leg lead is a guarantee, but we're in a great spot. So yeah, delighted. It was a cracking performance.
I was just about to say, Donnacha, you probably should have been on the podcast fighting Mo Salah's corner last week for team of the season, but sure, that's another debate. was just going to ask you about the new signing from Schalke, Kabak. Apparently, I think he was given man of the match. I don't know whether that was Liverpool official
that's
or
one
not.
of those. That's one of those redundant kind of token gestures because of the narrative of him coming into the game. He was calm on the ball. He was good in possession. He wasn't panicked. He didn't actually have all that much to do. Won his aerial battles. He was more than fine with it. Like, but he wasn't man of the match. It's just one of these things, you know. Like, imagine if you ran the numbers, the propensity of debut man of the match awards is probably way higher than any other position or any other situation in football. But yeah, he was good. Like, he's only 20. I think some Liverpool fans, or maybe general, like, they think he's the finished article. He's miles off it. That's not a criticism. You're supposed to be at 20. So yeah, good signs. Looks like a really decent player.
Positive, yeah, that's positive. Obviously for Liverpool and Liverpool fans, with a fit defender, I suppose.
Yeah,
that's the main thing you can take out of it.
I hope Ben Davis gets some minutes, because I really don't want that guy to have, you know, taken a massive opportunity and basically sacrificed a huge chunk of his playing career for a training kit. No one deserves that. It's not fair. Like, you can't come in as a 25-year-old who plays every minute of championship football and at least not get an opportunity. So I really hope that comes soon for him, because, like, why bother otherwise? It would just be, it's almost cruel.
Yeah. Steve, we'll obviously go to matters at the new camp the other night. Did we witness one of the best performances by an individual at the new camp? And I'm not talking about Mbappe, I'm talking about Verratti. I honestly thought he was unbelievable. He was unbelievable on the night. His assist for Mbappe's first goal was sensational. The little flick. He was ever on the pitch. He was at times almost like a left-sided of the diamond Pogba, getting up and down that side of the pitch. He was just sensational. What do you make of his performance, Steve?
Oh, he truly was sensational. It was one of those performances that you see the ball going to midfield and you're like, oh, he was getting in on the action on PSG side. Like, it's the same man again. Like, how is he everywhere? He's involved in everything. Even on the defensive side, like, he put so much work in, and he really showed his qualities, passing, defending. Just it was a game to remember from a midfielder, and it wasn't from, oh, this guy came on and he scored a hat trick. It was all the hard work he did, and all the running on the field he did, and every challenge he went for. It was a great game to see from like a centre midfield, where we're praising somebody for just being a midfielder, not going up front, not making a last ditch tackle, trying to get back. Just, he controlled that midfield. And we're not talking against some farmer French league team, as people sometimes call them. It was against Barcelona. And yeah, I know they're not the same Barcelona team we've come to expect over the years, but they're still a top European side with some great talent in it, and he made it look magical.
Yeah, he was just so influential, like you said, all over the pitch. Before we get on to kind of Mbappe, because we're going to lead on obviously then to Haaland as well, two fantastic performances during the week. But I'm just gonna read out something that one of the lads, Dave, sent into the group about Koeman. Genius Koeman, he couldn't turn Everton into Barcelona, so he turned Barcelona into Everton. What is going wrong with Barcelona these days? They just look, I'm actually kind of lost for words of how to describe them, that they're just so poor. It's like Messi was pretty much anonymous. Dembele, I think, had a shot in the 70th minute, and that was his only piece of action in the game. I actually, to be honest, forgot he was playing until he came up with that shot. What could you see, Steve, on the other night against Paris Saint-Germain that kind of describes or sums up Barcelona at the moment?
It's a lot of like factors that some they should have seen coming in terms of some players' age and being in the team and kind of not replacing people over the years. Like, yeah, they had the same kind of starting lineup with kind of Iniesta and Xavi controlling that midfield for so long that they didn't get to play in some other midfielders to kind of take over. And like you have the likes of Busquets there now, he's not going to win you a Champions League or a league title. He's past his kind of golden age himself. And it was the same for one or two other players on the side. Like you look at Piqué, yeah, you could see how frustrated he was with Griezmann at one point. I don't know if you've seen the clip of just the two of them shouting at each other for a good 30 seconds of putting in more work and just, oh, you have to go there. Yeah, we're struggling too. And like nothing's going right. And it's the communication. You have Messi who did want to leave and his performances on the pitch show he wants to leave. It's obvious. Like if you look back at that game against PSG, there was no performance from Messi. He scored a penalty, but what did he do in the 90 minutes that made you even think he was on the field? Nothing. Like it seemed like you said, the front three disappeared. Griezmann just can't seem to get a performance that kind of made them buy him in the first place. It kind of feels like in a way, Timo Werner at Chelsea, like nothing's going right for him. He came to be one of these top goal scorers for a team and then go somewhere else, and then he can't hit anything. And you've probably seen it, and there was a great chance Griezmann had kind of earlier on in the game that, I thought he should have sank it, but he couldn't get it under control, just mishit it, just was a bit of disaster. But they're like Spanish clubs, their board is controlled in a different way, and obviously there's been a lot of arguments with Messi over the past year, and more so during the summer of, no, you have to stay and we're going to give you all this extra money. But when a player's not happy, it can affect a whole squad, especially if he's starting every game and the effort's not there. Like there would be arguments to, especially after a performance like that, well, why don't you drop Messi, Dembele, Griezmann? Go with your younger lineup. Have people fight for a spot in the team rather than just playing them because their name is it's who they are.
Yeah, I think when Ronald Koeman took the job in the summer, I think there was almost plans of getting rid of players and bringing in a new batch of players. Obviously, you got rid of Suarez, you got rid of Rakitic as well, but no one really came in to fulfill those positions that were left. I feel it's very much an aging team, and you obviously look at Piqué, you look at obviously Messi, even though he's still quality. Busquets as well. I think there was some stats on Busquets that he like missed 5 or 6 of the tackles he went in for, which is very, very unlike him, because he is the sort of player that breaks up the play, plays a simple 5-yard pass, and lets the creative players do the job in the night. It is very difficult to see them coming back from a 4-1 defeat. But have we seen evidence of maybe changing of the guard when it comes to Mbappe, when it comes to Haaland taking over from, we'll say, a Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo? What did you make of Mbappe's performance, Steve?
Mbappe was just, when you compare the two strikers, they're two different players completely in terms of what they're going to provide you. Mbappe is just so skillful on the ball. Like for one of those goals, it felt like, I don't know if you play FIFA much, but kind of that R1 and circle, nice finish into the corner, you know you're going to score. It's just
with the difficulty setting down on amateur, yeah, you can't miss.
That it's just perfect that people are like, come on, like really, are you doing that to me with this goal? Like he looked so confident for that. He knew that was going in. Like he just seemed to enjoy the game so much that he can do things like that. It's incredible. But the only thing I think he'll be criticised for is if he doesn't leave PSG, will he be considered like Messi or Ronaldo? Because people criticise the French league in general, and that PSG don't really have a strong rival season to season. Like, yeah, Messi did spend all his career at Barcelona, but it was Barcelona versus Real Madrid. It was Messi versus Ronaldo, Messi versus so many talented players in that Real Madrid team. At least there was that battle. PSG don't seem to have a rival in terms of consistent team, a consistent player, and another team that Mbappe is going to come up against. The Champions League is going to be the big factor of can PSG push it across the line and actually win a Champions League title, which, yeah, it's going to be a struggle for them. They might sack another manager if it doesn't happen. I think the pressure will be on, especially looking at after that result. And yeah, we've got rid of Barcelona. They'll be eyeing up, yeah, we can actually do it this year, but we've seen them fall apart against the likes of Barcelona and Manchester United, throwing away big leads before. So, but his performance on the night, perfect, magical goals. It just made me smile, really.
That's that's always a good thing, I suppose, taken from watching a game, having a smile on your face. I actually completely forgot about Pochettino being there, so I was actually quite excited before the game started to see what kind of tactics he brought to Paris Saint-Germain to kind of contain Barcelona and contain their key players. So I think Pochettino did a very good job. He obviously came away with a 4-1 win, 4 away goals as well for Paris Saint-Germain. Donnacha, question for you. Who would you rather have, Mbappe or Haaland?
I knew this question was coming. I used to and I still do, I adore Kylian Mbappe. Like, the kid's 22, he's got a World Cup winners medal, he is phenomenal. And in terms of his career, like, he's so good and he's been so good for so long, you kind of forget that he's 22. Like, he's got hopefully at least another 10 years at the top level. So where he makes his next move, if he stays at PSG, signs another contract, and then even stays and he'd leave at 25, 26, then he still has loads of time to do it in other leagues. I think he should leave as well. I mean, I think Italy, Spain, Germany, and who am I forgetting? England. Oh my God. Jesus. They're superior leagues. So he needs to test himself at the highest level. I would actually rather Haaland. And I have thought this for about a year, because I have, like, Mbappe has got pace, he's got flair, he's got great finishing ability. But what the hell is Haaland? Like, I don't think I've ever seen a player like him in my life at the age he is. I mean, he's Ruud van Nistelrooy, but in terms of his ability to be in the right place at the right time and just be like totally goal hungry. Yet somehow he seems to do it without being a selfish player. Like, how do you do that? Like, that's not possible. Like, Salah is a very selfish player. That's why he scores so many goals. And you have to be striker. But he's like, you know that X-Men movie with the guy who can do things in super quickly, so everything's in ultra slow motion. Whenever he's got a chance, it's like he goes into that mode, and he could like sip on a coffee and then bang a top corner. Either foot, he can head. He's big, he's strong. He doesn't shy away from a physical challenge. He probably doesn't have the technical skills of Mbappe. But Mbappe's skills are just God-given. It's just a generational talent. But Haaland is a generational talent, and then he's just a total killer. If we're here in 10 years and touch wood, they both have injury-free careers and they both win Ballon d'Ors, I'll be amazed if Mbappe finishes with more goals than Haaland. So I've just never seen anything like him. And if he goes to City, forget about it. Like, as that Vince Carter gift that goes around, it's over. If City get him, I don't know. I might as well all pack up in England because he's that good, in my opinion. I just love him.
Steve, just before I come to you, we threw up obviously a poll on the Fancy Kickabout's Instagram page. Who would you prefer, Mbappe or Haaland? And it is currently 50-50. So that just shows where everyone's thoughts are at the moment. So I'm hoping, Steve, you're going to be more of an Mbappe man. So the decision comes down to me to pick the winner. Pass it over to you, Steve.
I'm gonna upset you here because I can't.
He knows. He knows.
Yeah, like,
he knows that guy's a freak.
Mbappe, like on the ball, is just so skillful. Like the ball stays at his foot, like it's attached to it. It's unreal. But for finding the goal, like when we first kind of heard of Haaland and like we seen his talent, I didn't expect it to be so consistent. Like I was like, oh, this guy's just having one of those great seasons.
Yeah.
And then we're not going to hear him again. He's going to like join some big team. Yeah, he joined Borussia Dortmund. Yeah, he's gonna sit on the bench. He's not gonna score 5 goals this year. And then every game you're just like, how? Like he's in the right place. It just amazes me. Like you say, Ruud van Nistelrooy and everything, the knack of finding a goal, but it's Ruud van Nistelrooy, but he's not selfish. He's not completely lazy. It's amazed me like how young he is. Like, and if he joins City, I'm going to be the most devastated United fan. Like,
I think everyone who loves football will, and the 17 City fans will obviously have a great time. But it would be terrible for football if a talent like that ended up just City are still soulless to me. I know they have a huge fan base that predates the money, but they're just a soulless, joyless machine. They're like Skynet or something. And as a Liverpool fan, we've had some real ding-dong battles with them, and it's still an utterly redundant rivalry compared to United or even Liverpool-Chelsea. Like City, I just wish they'd get sick of running the club and sell it, and they go back to getting beaten 8-1 by Borough.
Because it's one of those things. Like if he joins City and City end up winning league after league with him scoring goals, I don't really care if City win the league. If he joined Liverpool, now that's so like if Liverpool win an FA Cup, I'm absolutely devastated. It's ruined by.
Don't worry, we just play the kids.
Yeah.
Unless the under 14s are really good,
yeah,
you can be safe from the FA Cup.
It's one of those things. Like he could end up at Man City and he'll break records. He'll like the talent they have around them. Like
there's a really interesting element to Haaland in that, like where he's from and who his dad is means that, like, we've had a generation, like pretty much of our entire lives, the pinnacle was always sort of Real or Barca, and the continent that always developed the best players, well, yeah, obviously Europe, but South America, these South American superstars, and it was always Barca, Real Madrid. Haaland, it's conceivable that Haaland, when he moves next, he moves to England and he stays there for the rest of his career. You could be looking at the guy, I'm thinking so far in advance, but you could be looking at the guy who takes Alan Shearer's goal scoring record. If he moved in the next year or two, he's that good. And his dad, like at Leeds and City, he played for. So I think United, for those reasons, might be behind the 8 ball in terms of convincing him to go to Manchester United. And we know the history between Roy Keane and his dad. But like this could be the guy that just blows every record. And listen, that's so hyperbolic. But again, last night, he's not really in the game too much. Dortmund are 1-0 down. Dahoud scores the cracker to get them level. And then Haaland just pops up with 2 chances that, one is a great move. The second one is this ability to just slow down time. And like Haaland's second goal, if you watch it, the ball's already crossed the line before I've even thought about what he should do with the ball. He's already scored before me watching. Like, if that was FIFA, I would have taken a touch. Doesn't need it. It's not how he rolls. It's like, what is the shortest way to get ball in goal? And he doesn't care about anything else. And he's phenomenal.
Yeah, for me, Haaland is, he's just a joy to watch. He has, I think it's 18 goals in 13 Champions League appearances, which is for a 20-year-old is just phenomenal. It's
just
ridiculous.
mad.
It's absolutely ridiculous. Another thing I'm going to make a point about Haaland is, like Steve obviously mentioned, Mbappe in the French league. A lot of criticism obviously of the French league, how easy it is. But Haaland has been doing it for a year and a half now in a Bundesliga where Bayern Munich are obviously top of the pile. Everyone's trying to beat them and compete with them, but his numbers are still outrageous for Dortmund, Bundesliga, Champions League. So for me, I think he's achieving more right now because what he's coming up against in the Bundesliga, in the Champions League, compared to Mbappe. But another thing, kind of gonna continue on the point that Donnacha made about his finishing. Every time I looked at a video today of just his goals, and every single one of his goals, it's just like the keeper had no chance. Absolutely no chance, because the ball was gone by the keeper before the keeper could even make a decision, before the keeper could even get his feet right, his hands right. The ball was in the back of the net, and it was just quality finish after quality finish. And again, like you said, Donnacha, he mightn't be involved too much in the game, but yeah, he comes up and very comfortably scores 2 goals, but he makes them look so easy. And again, Mbappe probably made his goals look very, very easy as well the other night. But it's a clean sweep for me in terms of Haaland. I'd be picking Haaland over over Mbappe, and that's obviously from a United's perspective as well, but also just as a general football fan. He's just phenomenal, just absolutely phenomenal.
If you think of his impact, right? So the first time I came across Haaland was shortly before Liverpool were playing Salzburg in the Champions League in the group stages, and he came along downfield, and of course he scored because it's what he does. And then it was like, this guy's good, and Minamino was in that side as well. We went ahead and signed them. But imagine 18 months ago thinking, oh yeah, there's going to be a guy who comes along who's going to make Kylian Mbappe look a little bit normal. You're like, what? Like that would be such an absurd notion, and it's not a detraction from Mbappe. He's world class. He's going to have so many goals and achieve a lot in his career. But Haaland kind of makes him look normal. The only striker I've ever seen at Haaland's age who I could even try and compare to it, and the comparison is actually rubbish because I think Haaland has so much more about his game, was Michael Owen. Michael Owen's first 5 yards, he's already there before the defender even knows where there is. And before he had his knee injuries, like he won a Ballon d'Or, and his finishing was outrageous. And Haaland's finishing is just like the manner of his goals. He puts a top corner so often when he doesn't need to. I'm very excited just to watch him. I hope it's not at a club that I despise, if it was at mine, like I've already been pinching myself that we got Jurgen, and we've seen what's happened. So maybe it could happen. Who knows? But wherever he goes, titles are going to follow.
Right. What I want from this next question is a one-word answer. I know we've only had the first leg of some of the games, but who's your money on, Donnacha, for winning the Champions League this year?
Chelsea.
Big shout, man. Big shout.
I'm not allowed any more than words.
No, that's it. And I'm going to jot these down so we can come back to them, Steve?
I'm going to go with PSG.
I'd probably go Man City.
That's good. That's a good tournament then.
Good variety there as well. So I'm sure we all have our good reasons for picking the clubs we picked. But Donnacha, you obviously mentioned RB Salzburg. We might touch on something that took place in the Bundesliga this week in their former manager, Marco Rose from Mönchengladbach. So Borussia Dortmund have announced that he will be joining them in the summer. Does anyone else find this really just such a bizarre situation, in the sense that Dortmund are 6th, Gladbach are 7th, both 6 points off Champions League position? I just find it fascinating that this news came out. Could there be a situation where final day of the season, both of them again need to win, and Rose is looking at the opportunity to lead out Dortmund in the Champions League next season, or to have one last hurrah with Gladbach and get them into the Champions League? I might come to you first, Donnacha. Do you find that bizarre in any way?
Yeah, no, it totally is. I saw one hilarious tweet that went viral during the week about someone saying, my God, I can't believe he's going to their city rivals, thinking Borussia is a place. Which I got a good crack out of that one. It is very weird, and honestly, since Julian Favre was sacked at Dortmund, I kind of have not really been following them all that closely. That situation, I wonder, has that situation happened in the Premier League before? I feel like on some level, whether it was relegation situation or a top 4 situation, you have an outgoing manager playing against his incoming team, and there's maybe a conflict of interest. Might sit on that one. Might have a think. Maybe it happened before, but it's entirely conceivable that could happen at the end of the season. What I think is quite sad about the Bundesliga is this is another example, like the Upamecano deal, where the Sharks just bite everything below the top 2 or 3 in the Bundesliga, and usually it's just one gigantic shark, Munich, who just the best player at the second place team, goink. And this just happens again and again. Happened with Hummels, happened with Lewandowski, happened with Götze at the time. And it's sad for the Bundesliga because it's a great league and it's got loads going for it. But it's a shame that and I would say Rose is going from a decent club to a bigger club, even though Mönchengladbach have some European pedigree in the past. He's making a jump. He's going to a more high profile club. Be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, no, it'd be very, very interesting. And I actually texted a friend a couple of days ago, just asking him, he's a Dortmund fan, and just asking him, what did he think? Did he think this was a little bit crazy? And he kind of agreed with what we both just said there, that it is a bit of a mad situation where he could find himself in a situation where he either allows Dortmund get into the Champions League or Gladbach get into the Champions League. Because I actually text my friend just asking, is this a normal thing to do in Bundesliga in Germany? Because kind of what you mentioned there, Donnacha, it does kind of ring a bell with a situation, and I think it might have happened in a different European league.
I think it's happened with a player. Maybe someone has an agreement to go from X to Y and ends up playing against Y just before leaving X, with massive implications.
There was the situation with Mario Götze, I suppose, in the Champions League final. He didn't play.
There's a great example. Yeah,
he didn't play in the end. Steve, are you on board with us in agreement, thinking that it's a very, very bizarre situation and that they could have maybe kept it in-house until the end of the season? I know it's very difficult these days with things getting leaked left, right and centre within clubs, but do you think they could have made a bit more of an effort maybe? Again, we don't know too much about Bundesliga in terms of what their normality is, but if that happened in the Premier League, you'd be going nuts, I'd say, as a fan.
Yeah, but it's a very odd move. The only thing I can nearly think of is do you announce it to kind of put the other team on edge of can we trust this manager to get us results if he's moving to our nearest competition? Do we get rid of him early before his contract finishes? Is a loss him trying to sabotage us? Now, I doubt it will be, but those questions will play in your head if you're kind of higher up of, well, yeah, we kind of we could have done better, made a few odd decisions during that game. Yeah, it baffled me when the news came out. It just seemed like it's such an odd thing to happen, especially midpoint of the season. That yeah, I'm going to the team beside me in the table, and you're going to have to deal with it.
Gaz, were you saying that Rosa had been at Dortmund in some capacity beforehand?
No, sorry, Salzburg.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Salzburg. And he was with actually Leipzig back in the day when they were called Locomotive, I think it was Leipzig. I think he was with them then.
No way.
Yeah, he's I think he's a young-ish manager. I think he's 44, 45. And again,
great age.
Yeah, great age. Love that age.
Love that age.
good old soccer quotes.
The days of Tim Lovejoy, they were the best.
Bring them back, man.
You wouldn't get away with that now.
No,
like even that. What age? I'm 24. Oh, great age. You actually wouldn't get away with that anymore.
Yeah, so obviously interesting times for Dortmund, obviously for the rest of the season and beyond the season. I know he's been described by people as the next Jurgen Klopp. Again, time will only tell. Could be a huge pressure on his shoulders as well.
He's going to be a manager that's going to have a serious amount of money in the coffers pretty soon. If you think of Haaland, Sancho, I mean, I actually watched Jude Bellingham last night, looking really, really good. He's been bought for 20 million, but I'd imagine he now goes for 40. And Reina as well. Like I don't know if they're going to sell them or keep them, or like they've either got a really, really high quality, talented young squad, or they're going to have a just silly amount of money to be able to spend.
Yeah, and I suppose if you're that manager, you want to hold on to your best players, but also you want to be able to come into a club to make transfers, bring in the players that you want. And again, there could be some controversy behind if he brings a couple of players from Gladbach as well, to go with everything.
They've got a bit of history. Didn't Torgan Hazard come from Gladbach to Dortmund a couple of years ago? And
did Marco Rose think he might have come from Gladbach as well?
Maybe
back in the day. Just speaking of transfers, obviously it's kind of coming to the time that we have a bit of fantasy football chat. I was going to ask you guys, what's your take on, because I know it can be a debatable topic whether to take a -4, a -8 point hit, maybe not on a weekly basis, but we'll say even every second week. Are you a manager that takes those gambles, Steve, making a couple of transfers and taking hits and then hoping there's a reward at the end of it?
Yeah, like I've done it a few times this season, but I think it's more down to noticing a lot of players drop off within a week and having not a starting 11 anymore. Like you've had in mind that I'm going to make this one transfer, and then you realize 3-4 of your players are out injured or suspended, and it really throws a wrench in the works. So I'd rather get them back playing. Like at the moment, I'm looking at my team and you have Justin out, Gedungen kind of doubtful. Maybe he'll rest and then playing the Champions League instead. I'm stuck with Chilwell, who isn't getting a game for Chelsea at the moment. And yeah, I don't know, will Ben Mee start again for Burnley, or is he going to rest with the head injury? It kind of throws, will I take an extra hit this week as well? I'm debating it at the moment.
Just having a quick look at the league table. Obviously the fantasy Kickabout league. Steve, you're 27th. I'm 29th, and Donnacha is 30th. So we're almost like in a little league of our own down here at the moment.
Basement dwellers.
Exactly, and it's probably because we took all those -4, -8 point hits throughout the season. I don't know. Are you a manager that does that, Donnacha?
Yeah, you know, for people listening, they're like, oh yeah, inside tracks, fancy football, some golden nuggets. Whatever we say, judging on our position, if you do the exact opposite of what we say, you're probably going to do pretty well. So yeah, just do the opposite of everything I'm about to tell you. In terms of the 4 and like sometimes even the 8-point hits, there's two situations where it's almost necessary, like it pretty much is necessary. If you have one transfer in a game week, but you have 3 players who are out injured, if you marry that with the fact that you might have 1 or 2 cheapos, you know, guys who don't play or guys who were, you know, who are going to ship goals or whatever, on your bench. So if you have a situation where you can't ever go into a game week with like less than 11 players capable of scoring your points. So you work that out, and you just take every situation for what it was. I think I took an 8-point hit a couple of weeks ago because Walker Peters got injured. Someone else got injured. Kevin De Bruyne got injured as well, and there was a third player that I needed to take out. So I took an 8-point hit because you know that the opportunity to score points for those guys who are out is 0. So you really only need one defender to get you a clean sheet. Now you're in point profit, I guess. So they're the obvious situations where I would pull the trigger on taking the hit for 4 points or sometimes even 8 points. And then the other one I do, and I probably have done this too frequently this season, is if you're taking a guy out, if you're selecting a guy to go in, if he's a striker or if he's a midfielder, I mean, that has to hit. That has to land. Because if you take out Grealish, got 2 points this game week, you take out Grealish for a 4-point hit and you put in Harvey Barnes, for example, and all of a sudden Harvey Barnes only doesn't do anything, like swing and a miss, you've now killed 2 points off your team for no reason. So the only position or line where I do a regularity is the defense, and for that I look at the fixtures. I look at teams who don't really score goals: Burnley, Newcastle, West Brom, Sheffield United. Well, West Brom started to score a little bit more. And if you've got a mid-table team who are playing West Brom at home and you've got a cheap defender, you know that the defender just needs to play. There's a clean sheet there that's a begging to be gained. And there's potentially more upside, especially if they're a fullback. So I only kind of mess around tactically and take the hits if it's for a defender. Whereas, granted, the ceiling for how many points a guy could get is probably higher for a striker. Just the pain of making the hit, making the change, taking the hit, and then whoever it is, Callum Wilson or Bamford or Aubameyang, when they just fall flat on their face, you just feel like a tool. And it happens a lot. That's why I'm 30th, I guess.
And I suppose I can't really say much. I think we're actually level on points.
Oh yeah,
I think we are. Yeah. I took a -8-point hit last game week, looking at the double game weeks for obviously. I brought in Pope, I brought in Ben Mee. Obviously, I had Diaz there, I had Gundogan, and I had Sterling. So I went captain with Sterling, which I thought last night would have been actually a huge kind of payoff because Gundogan obviously didn't partake in the second game. So that turned out to be pretty disastrous because Sterling got a yellow card, so he got 1 point, which doubled to 2. Diaz obviously missed the first game, so didn't get a clean sheet. Ben Mee obviously got a clean sheet in the first game, but then was out of the second game. And I had Martinez on the bench with 12 points, and I brought Pope in, and he got 10 points. So I got 70 points, 75 points overall, but I just saw it as the defeat this week. Again, with the -8-point hit, it obviously cost me a little bit. What are we thinking, Steve, then for the next game week? Because we have Leeds and Southampton double game weeks.
Yeah, currently I have Bamford in my team already, so I'm happy with that. And I'm thinking of replacing Chilwell with the likes of maybe Dallas, because they're playing Southampton, and their other game is Wolves. So I could see them maybe pull off at least one clean sheet over that. And Dallas does tend to get involved, kind of but maybe an assist in the game as well. Like, fingers crossed, but I'd be more banking on a clean sheet with that one. And I just need to ship Chilwell out of that team completely. Southampton wise, I don't know who. Do you bring in Ings?
He'd be the guy I'd be looking at. Yeah.
Yeah, just having a look at my team here. I'm planning, just going to bring me straight back out. I just brought him in for that one game week because of the double game week. Probably similar thinking to Steve, bringing in Dallas. He's a cheap defender, but he's not really a defender. I think he's been playing centre mid for Leeds the last couple of games, so he's come up with a goal and an assist in the last couple of games. But like Donnacha mentioned, Danny Ings, I think I'm going to bring him in for Calvert-Lewin. Calvert-Lewin sitting on my bench. He's doubtful as well for the game week. But I'm also very much considering Rafinha in midfield and as a captain potentially. I read somewhere today or yesterday that since game week 16, he's been involved in 38% of Leeds' goals, which is a quite good return.
That's Harry Kane like. I don't know what Harry Kane's percentage is, but I'm just assuming it's nearly 1 and 2.
Yeah, something I'd say it's not far off. Maybe Harry Kane over the whole season is a higher percentage. What are you thinking for this game week, Donnacha? Obviously, we're giving our tactics away to each other, when we're in our little bubble down the bottom of the table.
Yeah, I ain't telling you shit. No, that's a great shout and a great point about Rafinha. I think I want the three of us to nail our colours to the mast and have one player with who's going to have a really high differential to put in this week, who's like a bit of a sleeper. And mine was going to be Rafinha, so I'm delighted that you brought him up. He looks like a really good player. The fact that there's end product coming is huge. The fact that Leeds have 2 games this week. Wolves are having a weird season. I think like the shock that they had with Raul Jimenez's injury, both losing such an influential player and the manner in which he was out, that's really wrecked their season. So in my mind, similarly to Van Dijk with Liverpool. So I think Leeds can definitely get at Wolves, and I think if they're going to get at Wolves, if you have a triumvirate of Bamford, Rafinha, and Dallas, I'd be amazed if that doesn't bring some decent points back. Bamford obviously in really good form. I've got him on my team too. So yeah, mine will be like, I'm probably going to make 2 changes. I have a kind of, every time I have Jack Grealish in my team, he fluffs his lines. I've bought him and sold him, I think 3 times this season. I buy him, he goes quiet. I sell him, and he gets 2 assists and a goal. So I'm definitely going to bring in Rafinha, and right now I've got Calvert-Lewin, who probably won't play. I'm not sure what his situation is. Bamford, who's obviously staying put, and Watkins. So I'm going to be taking out. I think I'm going to take out Grealish and put in Rafinha, and I think I'm going to take out Calvert-Lewin and stick in Danny Ings. Scored a cracking goal last week against Wolves, and like, as an ex-Liverpool player, like we talked in previous podcasts about, fantasy football is not a game for getting emotional about. And yet, here I am, and I'm putting him in. So hopefully he does all right this week. Like I think he was the year he first went to Southampton. I had him in from the start, and I didn't touch him for the entire season, and he got me just a rake points. So they're my 2 that's happening this week: Rafinha in, Danny Ings in, Grealish out, Calvert-Lewin out.
So you're captaining Rafinha?
I don't know who I'm going to captain, actually. I might captain Danny Ings, although they're playing Chelsea. And I've already alluded to what I think of new Thomas Tuchel Chelsea by tipping them to win the bloody Champions League. So yeah, probably Bamford, actually. I think I'll stick with Bamford. He's been good to me. I think he'll be my captain.
Okay. Steve, who are you going to captain this week? And are you also going to take a -4, -8 hit?
I think I might take a minus because, I'm the same. I have Grealish in my team as well, and it's just, he's not putting up the numbers for me. Like anytime I have him either starting or when I do put him on the bench is when he actually gets his points. And I'm sitting there looking at a team of Grealish with 10 points on the bench, being like, oh, he has to be in next week, and it gets me 2 consistently for a few weeks. Like I've Saka in midfield for Arsenal. Now they play Man City, so I can't really see Arsenal getting a great result, but I'd probably drop Grealish or maybe even Souček. They come up against Spurs because even though Gundogan, there's a good chance he won't play, just to be rested for the Champions League. I want to keep him in my team in general. I don't want to transfer him out and then transfer him back in. So it'd be Grealish who'd be the player to go for me. And yeah, I'd be looking at Rafinha to come in, and then captain, and it's going to have to be Bamford because yeah, he has the 2 games and it's against Wolves and Southampton. Where my other 2 strikers have Watkins, and I still have Timo Werner, and that's probably why I'm so far down the table, because I've had him in my team for so long and have had my fingers crossed that he'd live up to previous seasons, and he can't get it. I know he scored last week, but it was such a sloppy goal. If you've seen it, I don't know what's happened to him. But I just have faith that he'll pop up one week and be like, oh, finally, he's just banging in the goals again.
I think since Tuchel's come in, maybe there's been a slight shift in terms of his, we'll say, even his look. I know he missed still easy enough opportunities for a striker of his ability. But sometimes, as they say, you might need a goal to go in off your backside or off your ear or off your shoulder. It wasn't quite that for Werner, but it was extremely scrappy the way that ball ended up over the line. And of course there was the moment of the goal being reviewed by VAR, whether there was a handball by Giroud when the cross came into the box. But actually, to be honest, I'm actually delighted for him because he seems that sort of player. He just works hard and he doesn't give up. Yeah, he's been poor in front of goal, but he hasn't given up, and he's had decent returns. I think he's been involved in the most goals for Chelsea this season. I think he has, in terms of goals and assists. But based on what both of you guys have said, I think both of you said you're captain in Bamford. I think I'm just going to go with Rafinha as a captain differential, hopefully to get the edge on you guys and catch up with Steve a couple of places ahead of me. So that is my thinking for the weekend and game week 25. Lads, once again, thanks very much for joining us on the fantasy Kickabout podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. Always good chats and good discussions as always. And just for anyone listening, again, don't forget it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and also on YouTube. So until another week, guys, thank you very much and enjoy the games on the weekend.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, guys.
That's very enjoyable as always. Good chatting to you.
Take it easy, lads.